The following is a presentation of the Six Arrows Radio Network.
Do you have little foxes ruining your vineyard? No problem. We're talking transmitter hunting this time through on the Ham Radio 360 podcast.
MTCRadio.com presents Ham Radio 360, the podcast. Brought to you by Elecraft. Now, here's your host, Kel Nelson, K4CDN.
Welcome back into Ham Radio 360 podcast. Thank you so much for being here, for your support of the program as well as the sponsors that help keep this thing going as well. My name is Kel Nelson. The call here is Kilo 4 Charlie Delta November, and I've been a licensed ham since 2011. I began podcasting about the amateur radio hobby back in 2014. Here we are 3+ years later, and we're still having fun. Now, this particular program today is one that's been a long time coming. It's something I've really wanted to learn about here on the program with you, so we could take the knowledge that we gain together and go out and have a good time with it. I think you're going to love this one. We're going to talk about transmitter hunting with Larry Jacobs in just a few moments. But first, that's right, let's talk about Main Trading Company down in Paris, Texas. Yeah, Richard and Christine Lenore are still doing it big in the mom and pop shop this month. They've got a great deal on the Kenwood TS480. That's the HF plus 6 meters, 100 watt with internal tuner HF rig. The detachable face, so you don't have to take up all the space on your shack, you know, because your shack may get smaller and smaller as the time progresses because your wife brings more decor into the house. She's not listening, so it doesn't matter. We can talk about her, right? Anyway, it is an HF plus 6 meters, 100 watts. It's a great radio. Right now, on sale less than $860. That's including the $250 coupon. Let my friends at Main Trading Company know you heard about them here on the program. Check it out, the Kenwood TS480, on sale now at mtcradio.com. So excited to have Larry Jacobs on with us this time through Ham Radio 360 podcast. I hinted about it just maybe a couple of weeks ago, and then John, his son, who recently launched the brand new Field Radio podcast, and I were talking a little bit about it the other day. And Larry, I'm not sure if you heard the show, but I told John that I had to get you on before he did so I could ask all the Kel questions about fox hunting as we dive into this topic today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, it was great to get to meet you at Hamvention, and when John said, you need to talk to my dad about fox hunting, I was like, well, that's great because I've been looking for someone to talk about fox hunting on the program for over 3 years now, so I'm really excited to learn more about that. It's one of the things I've participated in one before, kind of accidentally, and I was the second place guy, which was really kind of comical unto itself, but I really don't know a whole lot about it other than something's hidden, you're trying to find it. Kind of like being married, maybe. And so can you kind of break...
My wife's not listening.
Yeah, mine's not either. I can guarantee you mine's not here.
Okay.
Can you kind of give us...
She's not out in the barn, huh?
No, she's at the house with the children. So can you give us a breakdown on really what is fox hunting, kind of a broad example of it?
Sure. It's called a lot of things. Out here in Utah, we called it bunny hunts. I don't know why. We didn't hunt for bunnies. We hunted for a transmitter. And then fox hunting is kind of across the country. Out in California, they call it T-hunts. When we pretty much come down to it's a transmitter hunt, and that says it all. I like things that aren't acronyms that you have to go like, what does that really mean? Are you hunting for a fox? Or are you hunting for a bunny? And in fact, we've had a little kickback from the animal rights people when we call it fox hunting, and I get all kinds of real nasty emails when I advertise fox hunting, and how can you possibly do that to that poor fox? So we're just going to call it transmitter hunting, and it's something that Dave Bill wrote a book called World's Greatest Hobby, and he just kind of left off. There's about 50 hobbies within the World's Greatest Hobby. And I especially like transmitter hunting because it involves the whole family, because you're only operating receivers, and anybody can operate a receiver. So you can get your kids involved. If you've got a 15-year-old son that runs like lightning, great. Give him a receiver and let him run. So that's kind of what we do. And it started out on 80 meters and it went to 2 meters, and we picked it up with CAP when they started putting emergency locator transmitters, and so that's basically what it is. So there's two real areas of funning. Yes, there's two areas of funning. One is the family-oriented stuff where we go out in parks and places like that. Actually, there's three, I guess. There's another one that is serious stuff, Southern California transmitter hunters. No rules, no boundaries, no complaints, no clues. And I'm going to talk about one of theirs. It went all the way from California to Utah, if you can believe it.
Whoa.
And then there's a ARDF, Amateur Radio Direction Finding. It's a national, international competition. And what we don't realize is there are people out there in Europe and Asia. They are professional transmitter hunters, and they run like crazy through the woods to do just that.
So it's when I'm thinking about this, and we talked about scouting a few weeks ago, but when I'm thinking about this, it's like, okay, Boy Scouts, we're going to go try to find this radio. Or, for instance, here locally, we've had some fox hunts where they put the fox or the transmitter wherever, and then couple guys get together, 2 or 3 in a group, and then they try to find it somewhere in town. But it's more than just a game that they play in local clubs. You've just expressed this is a pretty serious thing to some folks out there.
Oh, yeah. Around the world, it's crazy time. In fact, next year, the international is going to be in Korea. And I can tell you right now, the people that put those Korean courses together, they don't play fair. They make you run through rice paddies and all kinds of terrible things. But we're a little more kind to our people out here.
If we were coming to your local club or just local club in general, potentially, what would we expect, or as you've seen in the past, for a transmitter hunt? What should a new guy kind of expect to go into?
Well, there's several ways we do it. One is I always try and have about 5 walk-around transmitters where we don't want them to, if we're having a ham fest and we're doing transmitter hunting, I don't want them to have to leave the ham fest to go participate in it. So we do like 5 transmitters around in a walking area, and then we do a extra transmitter that's a driving one that's a little more power and a little harder to find. But one of the things you want to do if you put on a ham fest and you do transmitter hunts, make it easy enough that everybody really feels good. There's nothing like putting some real hidden transmitters and make them as hard as you can so you get 20 people participating and only about 3 of them find it. That's not the way to do it, because it's not going to make these other people feel very good about themselves.
It's kind of like everybody needs a participation trophy, but it's to keep them encouraged to want to come back and do it again the next time. Absolutely,
and that's why I do 5 plus 1. And give them a little card, and then they find the transmitter. They can put down the indicator that it has on it, and it's usually a call sign that I know going backwards. So it's nothing you can guess, but I can just look at the card and tell if they found them or not.
I got you. Now, are you using like a portable handheld radio to be the transceiver or the transmitter that they're hunting, or are there smaller devices? I'm sure that there's probably just thousands of ways to do this, but what's your preferred method?
Well, what I did back before all of the Chinese radios came out, about the smallest one around was a little Radio Shack, kind of a micro handheld. And they were like half a watt with internal batteries and 2 watts if you add power to it. So I started pulling them off on eBay at about $20 each. And I mounted up some PiCon, P-I-C, capital C-O-N, PiCon controllers from Bionix, and they control them, and that's mine. If I had to do it over again, I'd get the smallest little Chinese radios I could, probably get them down to $15, and use those. A lot of guys have built their transmitters, and boy, the problem is you're kind of roped in on the frequency and how it operates, but another reason to have a transceiver instead of a transmitter is because with these controllers, you can set it so like every minute it goes off for 30 seconds. And during that time, if you want to reconfigure the hunt, all you have to do is send the right touch tones, and all the transmitters respond and do different things.
I like that little trick there. That's a pretty good one. If we're looking to get started in the fox hunting, and I know we're going to continue to learn about it that whole thing as we go, the transmitter hunting. I'm gonna learn to say it differently as well. What is something that we can kind of prepare ourselves for? Do we need a scanner? Do we need a Chinese handy talkie? Do we need a portable Yagi? What are the kind of some of the parts of the gear that will help make us a more effective transmitter hunter?
Well, the most popular thing out there, and this is the amazing thing, is Arrow makes a really nice handheld Yagi. Elk Antenna does. But the most popular one is the one you make yourself for about $10. That's the measuring tape antennas, where you're taking PVC pipe and that free measuring tape from Harbor Freight that they want to give you, and you put it together, use about 5 inches of bare wire, soldering the directors together that way, and that's your match. And believe it or not, those things come down to about a 1.1 nothing SWR right in the middle of the 2 meter band. So and the amazing thing is too, you go back to the internationals and the nationals where these people fly in, they got the best equipment, and they're all running measuring tape antennas.
I guess that goes through customs a lot easier than maybe a log periodic or something.
Lots of measuring tape, and that's PVC pipe. So what's the big deal? But the main thing is they can go crashing through the brush, and measuring tape used for an antenna is not new. Mm-hmm. In fact, we used it on the first Oscar 6 satellite. I don't know if you knew about that part. No. They wanted about North American Rockwell wanted right around $150,000 to build a 10-meter telescoping antenna for Oscar 6. Well, we were pretty broke back then. Their AMSAT didn't really have a big fund like that. So one of the guys came up with this idea of a measuring tape antenna. So they took the measuring tape and they cut off a quarter wave on 10 meters and put one on either side. So it'd be a half meter or a full. I don't know exactly how long it was, but it was all coherent. And then have you ever played with a measuring tape where you just wrap it and make a big, like a bow?
Yeah.
Well, they did that, and then they put a pin. And so when Oscar 6 went launching onto space, they had little cables that pulled the pins, and out comes the measuring tape like you played with when you were a kid. There it is. Now, as a bonus, they painted one side black and one side white, and it became a solar windmill, and that caused the satellite to rotate. So, I guess that really has nothing to do with fox hunting, but it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it'd make a great show topic. I like that. I had no idea. And wow, more magic of ham radio here on Ham Radio 360 podcast.
There you go.
I want to come back with you in just a minute, Larry. I want to talk some more about this gear, about the tape measure antenna, and how we're going to utilize that to fox hunt and kind of get an idea about what is involved doing a fox hunt. So stick around, guys. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Ham Radio 360 podcast. The airspy.us website's your place to go for all things SDR radio. Currently 15% off the AirSpy R2 SDR. It's got enhanced shielding, filtering. It's a great piece of equipment that'll get you going. Yeah, it may not be the $20 dongle that you're going to get off Amazon or from eBay. It's not supposed to be. This is not your grandma's SDR. Listen, you got questions, they can answer them over there as well. Check them out, airspy.us. airspy.uniform Sierra. We're back with Larry Jacobs, WA7ZBO, and we're talking transmitter hunting, fox hunting, bunny hunting, T hunting, fill in the blanks. I'll probably say it wrong 5 or 6 times between now and the end of the program, but Larry, thank you again for coming on with us. We're really excited to have you here. Thank you for stopping by.
My pleasure.
Yes, sir. So we finished the first segment talking about a really interesting thing about the tape measure antenna on the Oscar 6, but going back to transmitter hunting with a tape measure antenna, those plans are all over the internet, and we'll find some good links to put in the show notes if you guys want to build one. That's one of the things that I haven't done, and I don't really know why. I think I may do that and see if I can come up with something to make it work around here. One of the questions, though, is once I have my tape measure antenna, then what do I do with it? Do I connect it to a scanner? Do I connect it to a handy, my favorite 2-meter rig in the truck, or how am I going to use that thing?
Well, the most common thing is a handheld, and the nice thing about these, not only they're very directive on receive, but also on transmit, so that makes a dandy emergency 2-meter 4-element, 3-element antenna, not only for receiving and transmitting, but in our case, we want to receive it. Right. And by the way, almost every ham fest in the country now, there's a class where they make them. We did this one called Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana, Utah amateur radio convention, and I think we made about 20 of them up there. For the number of people, that was 10% of the people, and we just charged them what it was. But basically, when we build them with a small lead going to BNC, and then from BNC you can go into anything. Oh, yeah. A lot of handhelds are still BNC. Some of them, you can go to the male or female, Chinese, Yaesu, ICOM, but it's very convertible. However, the problem with them is if you go looking for a transmitter, there's really no way to block that signal, because your radio, your modern radio, no matter what it is every component in that thing is trying to hear the frequency that you're tuned to. And so at one point, wouldn't matter if you disconnected the antenna, it would still be receiving it. So what we do, we have a little trick. We call it a offset attenuator. So what we want to do, we want to trick the radio into listening to a different frequency than what the transmitter is transmitting on. So this very small offset attenuator, I've got one in my hand right now. This one's made by Arrow. It's about $50. And basically what it is it has a little knob on the top. You put it on your radio and you take 4 megahertz up. So if it's a 145 that you're looking for, then you dial this thing to 149. Now, all of a sudden, you are in total control of what your radio is listening for. So every component's listening for 149, and you have that control. So now you can just start going towards the transmitter, and as it gets stronger, you just take it down to the weak, so it's into the noise, and there you go. You can almost walk right up on it. But the interesting thing is, that's probably not the most common way to find it. The most common way is called body fading. You ever heard of that?
I have. I actually did that with my truck. It's a long story, but please explain it to us so we'll...
With your truck?
We're not going to have to listen to Kel's version of that, but tell us what body fading is.
Okay, what it is, it's you want to attenuate the signal. So what you do is you take your handheld, and when you get close to where you think it is, you take the antenna off, and or you can leave it on if it is a weak signal. You hold it right to your chest, and then you start turning around in circles. And when the signal fades away, it's behind you because your body is attenuating the signal. Now, I got to tell you that some of our bodies are better attenuators than others. If you're a skinny guy, you're not going to attenuate much. But if you're like me, you got probably another 10 dB going for you there. And so you just take it. Another trick is you tune off frequency. So if it's on 140, say it's on 145.5, you go to 145.55 or something, like not 5.05 or whatever, just off just enough to make it kind of fuzzy to where somebody'd say, hey, you're off frequency. Well, then that attenuates it down a little bit. And in fact, the Hamfest that we did a 5 transmitter walk around, and this guy and his son didn't have an antenna at all. They just used body fading. They found every one of them. So I'm impressed.
So we're just using ourselves basically to interrupt the signal back to the receiver.
That's right. And the bigger yourself there is, the better it works.
and that will work, Larry. That would work if we were 2,000 feet away. That would work if we were 200 feet away. We're just trying to block to kind of get a direction to point ourselves into. Is that correct?
Yes. You can. I would suggest you put it on your chest because it's kind of hard to hold it on your back. Yeah. So,
And just turn on your heel, and that's where you need to go.
That's right.
Gotcha. So that's one way that I've seen people do that. I've also seen people use the handheld directional antennas. Can you just do it with a rubber duck and just use, like you said, the body fade and kind of go that direction like the folks did there? That worked well enough, I guess.
It does work well enough. You're not going to be the first to find them if you're in a time contest, because it takes a little bit. The guy that has a handheld Yagi, like a measuring tape antenna, and a good either offset attenuator or a BK3YNG Sniffer 4, $300, and all it does is sniff hidden transmitter. So, there's always going to be something that comes out a little bit better. And I've got one here I can play with, so it's got automatic attenuation and everything. So there you go. And Yagi's not the only one. You have Faraday loops where you actually go for the fade, where the null. There's slot antennas. There's switcher antennas. Back in the early 70s, we started building switcher antennas, and what this is they measure the signal hitting two antennas, and the one comes in a little bit quicker than the other one. One says, "Hey, you got to turn right or you got to turn left to equalize it out," and those are quite effective, but they have multipath problems. But still, that's what Civil Air Patrol still uses a lot of those.
When I look online sometimes, I'll see these direction-finding rigs that you magnetize and you put up on the roof of your car that, say, has 4 points of antennas and some sort of device that comes back into your car. And I guess it's reading in 360 degrees or as much as it can. I'm assuming that could be used in a transmitter hunt, but that's not really where we're going with this show. Have you ever used anything like that? And if you have you compared it to what we've been talking about? And is there any difference in the use of it?
Yeah, I've used them. I had one, but it wasn't a very good quality one. It's made by Ramsey. But it did work, but it's mainly those are driving like, hey, you're going to go find something 20 miles away. And it's kind of hard when you want to stop on the freeway and get out and get your Yagi. That's right. So you see these still, police use them for finding LoJacks and things like that. But they're effective if you have, and it's kind of cool too. And back in Dayton, I don't know if you saw, there was a booth there that had one that was a software-defined radio, had a little thing going with a computer, and it looked pretty cool. I was really tempted, and then I thought, when would I use that?
Yeah, there's always something to tempt someone at Dayton.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My biggest temptation was the Tennessee pork chop sandwiches.
Yeah, that was amazing, and the sausage that was as big as that was amazing as well.
Breakfast.
Ham. Can you believe this? Hams are talking about food on a ham radio podcast. Exactly. Hey, I have. Like I said, I participated once, and it was kind of a fluke that I even participated. The local club was having an event, a transmitter hunt. I was actually supposed to be working that morning for my wife, and I left her shop, and I went towards the east. Her shop's on the east side of town. I went further east, and I heard the transmitter, and I was like, wait a minute. And I have a Diamond Super Gainer, for instance, on this particular vehicle, on a front fender mount of a F-250 truck. And I was able to drive around and point my omnidirectional antenna and find the dadgum transmitter, the second guy to find it. It was just amazing to me but I was using my truck as the body fade, but I was using the body of my truck, I guess you'd say, to do that. But that's my transmitter hunting story. I didn't win, but I was second place.
That for a guy that just stumbled across it, that's a great story. I'm going to use that one. Okay, I'm going to put that in my ream of stories about transmitter hunts, and I got a few of them.
Well, my big head inside the cab of the truck blocked. It was the head fade thing there. I don't know, but it worked. I was able to orient my truck in the parking lot, basically doing donuts without spinning the tires. And finding when it would transmit, finding where it was hot, and kept moving in that direction and stumbled right over them. It was great. I was so excited.
You definitely got to get into this, Cale.
Well, it's so funny you mentioned that. My buddy Pokey, who is our EC of the local Aries group here, is really wanting to learn about fox hunting. I know he's going to be excited to hear the show, as well as help our local CERT group and the local SAR teams to learn about transmitter hunting and direction finding. That's one of the things that I needed to learn something about it. The reason for, because I need to be able to help, build these antennas and figure out how to do these things. To me, it's another thing to do. And I want to talk in just a moment about transmitter hunting when someone local may be causing a problem. Have you ever done anything like that before?
Yes, actually, we did it, and we found 2 stolen radios. When I was in the Civil Air Patrol, we found a couple planes. I didn't find anybody running off the road that was using his ham radio, but using the techniques. And by the way, I'm probably the only professional transmitter hunter you've ever seen, because I worked for the railroad, and we had a thing called a rear end device, and that took the place of the caboose. Yeah. And they operated on UHF, and they sent signals back and forth to the front end to tell them, hey, the rear of the train's moving, here's your brake pipe pressure and all that. Well, I'm out here working on the railroad, and this train pulls in and it just jams all of the other trains. And we had engineers out there looking at the power lines and all kinds of things. And I said, this is nuts. So I fired up a 2-meter radio on UHF, found the frequency, and went and found the rear end device for them. And what happened, these things would come in, they'd be locked on. They're supposed to just come on for about a quarter second, transmit, and then go off. Well, they'd lock on. So the train would pull in. He'd block everybody until he left. Wow. And so I ended up creating a job for myself, finding rear end devices that were locked up until they came out with a timeout device. So I don't know. Did that have anything to do with anything, by the way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk some more about it. Yeah, I do. I want to hear some more experiences and potential for us to be able to help folks in the, let's say, the local EMS or the local police department when someone's screwing with the radios. And we'll talk about that in just a second here on Ham Radio 360. Elecraft knows their potential clients. They know the folks that they build these radios for, and they're making it easier for you to get your hands on ham radio. Visit Elecraft.com. They've got a new way to order the K3S line. You may be just the casual user. You might be the big DXer or even the contester in DXer. They've got pre-packaged deals for you on the web right now. Elecraft.com. Hands-on ham radio. All right, so we're back with Larry, Whiskey Alpha 7, Zulu Bravo Oscar, and he just admitted to us that he was a professional transmitter hunter, and I didn't realize you worked the railroad either. I'm a model railroader. I always kind of wanted to work on the railroad and just never did, but that's always intriguing. We still chase trains.
I was a diesel locomotive electrician for about 30 years.
Wow.
And then I took about 5 years off and produced videos for them, so I got to travel all over the railroad. I think I produced about 150 videos for them.
That's amazing. Larry, I didn't even ask you. I know that your family, you come from a 3-generational family of amateur radio operators. Your dad was a ham. How long have you been a ham radio operator?
I actually got my novice back in the 60s and then let it lapse in 7JHF, I think it was. And then back when they had novices. Mm-hmm. And then I got my technician, and then I got my general, and I'm still working on that extra. I keep having to buy. It's taking so long. I keep having to buy Gordon West's new edition. It's like, oh man, I had 4 years to do it, and now I blew it. I got to buy them again. You know,
I've got 4 actual copies of the Tech Study Guide, so I can understand. It took me 16 years to get my tech. So I mean, there's no shame in this game.
Well, I think I'm closing in on 50 years here.
Wow. Well, congratulations, and thank you for your family's contributions to the hobby as we're enjoying the story now from you transmitter hunting. One of the things that I hear we've had some problems, just honestly, locally. We've had some trouble with some jammers on the local VHF fire department frequencies in the past. What can a ham do? Or what can anybody do to transmit hunt, not to go out and get in trouble and, kick somebody's door in or anything like that. But I'm sure that the local authorities would be interested in all the help they can get when they've got a problem like that. What can we do, and how does that really work if we're going to try to help find somebody that, or even if it's a ham repeater getting blocked by some lid staying keyed up for hours on end? How do we begin that process?
Well, you begin by looking around and getting yourself an antenna and an attenuator, and then start using it and getting to know things like multipath and reflections. Just get a little bit of expertise, and that's why we do it too. This kind of, like I said, mentioned earlier, CAP. It was in the early 70s that CAP got involved because the FAA started putting in mandatory ELT devices on the planes, and which I think the average find after that went up like 150, 200%.
Wow. But
they didn't know, CAP didn't know all that much about it, Air Force Auxiliary, and they kind of went to the hams. And so it involved a lot of us hams. We started equipping airplanes and doing things like that. So we kind of got into it in that vein, and it paid off. We actually saved a few lives, found a few not so good lives. And other than that, and a lot of technology has changed. Back in the 70s and 60s, almost all the public safety bands were on VHF. And somebody gets a handheld radio, they can real play havoc. But now with the new trunking systems and digital and everything, they can just take that, send down a command, that radio no longer works. Yeah. So we don't see a lot of it. But again, we see weird things like, last year I found we were getting a repeater jammed, and you know what it was? It was a microwave motion detector at Kohl's department store, and it was pointed right at the repeater, and it had this birdie on there that would just literally drive everybody nuts. And so we got on the air on UHF and found it, and Kohl's wouldn't have admitted to it, but the next day it went away.
So it's really, it's not complicated. It's really like being at the Ham Fest trying to find the guy walking around with a transmitter in his pocket.
Yeah, and I've done that. And sometimes on the handhelds, especially the Yaesus, if you have a speaker mic, if that's not plugged in all the way, it keys that thing up. I don't know if you knew that, but all you do is pull it out just a little bit, and all of a sudden you've got a jammed transmitter. And down at Ruby's Inn, the Rocky Mountain Convention, all of a sudden here's our administration frequency. Somebody's jammed it up, and it turned out to be one of the volunteers up in this motel room with it just barely out enough to jam it up. And there was 3 of us that found them at the same time. We all tried to claim credit, but, Well,
that's really interesting. It just seems like it would be more to it than that. But, again, that's the magic of ham radio. And what we've been learning here over the course of 3 years is that it doesn't have to be complicated to work. You need to be able to know what you're doing with it to make it work.
Absolutely. And that's why I say practice, practice, practice.
And speaking of practice, what are some good practices for transmitter hunting? And then I want you to tell me what are some don't do practices for transmitter hunting.
Well, there's a few of those. Let me run through them here. I actually made a list. I kept thinking, oh yeah, I remember that one. Oh yeah. Okay. First of all, it used to be kind of a race. And it was like, okay, first person that gets back to the front desk with the information where this transmitter is, they win. Well, I got caught up in one of those one time, and my son John was driving my truck, and we found it. He got into a race back to through the campground, and we come barreling in a pile of dust, and I'm in the back laying down spread eagle trying to keep from bouncing out. And along behind us come a half a dozen very mad campers about, hey, why are you racing through the parking lot? Also, it's very dangerous. So a lot of the clubs now, rather than make it a race, they make it a mileage event. So they take your miles, and then whoever comes in within an hour with the less miles, they actually win. And out in California, we even have a name for it. It's called the Crenshaw Mile. Crenshaw Boulevard, there's a it's a donut shop now, and you line up your front bumper with the edge of the donut shop, and then you drive Crenshaw Boulevard for 9 miles, and you pull over to the side at this other place, and somebody looks at your miles and says, "Yep, your 9 miles is actually 8.99," and then they use that as a multiplier or divider to get the thing. So we don't like to make them running races. Another thing is, if you're putting out 5 transmitters, try and do it in a way that it's not the fastest runner, because the most of us that go these transmitter hunt, these conventions, we're not really running mood. I've got a leg that's probably gone, and the other one's talking to it and saying, "Hey, I want to be there." And for it to turn into a hey, the fastest runner wins, that's kind of hard. Also, you don't want to make it too hard. Like I said earlier, make it easy enough. You can make a couple hard ones, but make them easy enough that it whets their appetite. How would it be if you entered the Boston Marathon, and after the first person comes across a line, they close down the finish line and all go home? It'd make you feel kind of weird, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be worth running.
No, well, you want them to come back and get better and better. Watch your times. I went to a transmitter hunt one time where the guy says, "Yeah, we're going to make it really hard. It's only going to come on for a half a second every 5 minutes." And he picked the frequency right on top of a control frequency for a repeater. Well, that was a little frustrating. You sit there and all of a sudden here goes a signal and everybody swirls around. Which direction? Hey, it's gone for another 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So make it easy enough that it whets their appetite and gives them success, because success always builds it.
There's one of the things that I enjoyed about the one that I kind of fell into was that it seemed like to me it was transmitting often enough that I wasn't just sitting there waiting, and it transmitted long enough that I could do donuts in a parking lot and get a better feel for where it was at.
That's a great idea. At the most, I do 1 minute on, 1 minute off, so it's very dependable. But most of mine are constant, and with these new little handhelds, you can do that. Another thing is always keep it on public property. Don't make people go wandering into private property. That's a no-go. And also, you're going to draw attention. Be a good ambassador. When somebody walks up to you and say, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" Don't say, "Oh, we're talking to Mars," or now this is true. We were having it at a convention site at a hotel where, 99% of the public was unaware of what we're doing. Mm-hmm. The guy hid the transmitter at the swimming pool. And so when we show up with these antennas, one of them, of course, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And he says, "Oh, there was a Soviet satellite came down with a radioactive payload, and we're trying to find it."
Oh, gosh.
Well, we got a call real quick from desk saying people are checking out.
Oh my gosh!
You're not welcome here anymore.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. So don't be the wise guy. Just tell them what you're doing, and also, if you want it, to get some little ARL leaflets selling, "Hey, this is ham radio," and maybe we'll interest someone, but at least we won't put them down by telling we're talking to Mars.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's some good ideas. What are some bad ideas?
Well, I thought that was a pretty bad idea.
That one's a bad idea, but the leaflet handing out was a good idea.
Okay.
In the midst of the bad idea.
If you're going to hide a transmitter, make it. I have a label. In fact, I got one right here somewhere. I don't have it, but I have a label, and it says, "This is a hidden transmitter. It is part of a Homeland Security exercise. If any questions, call," and then I give my name and my telephone number, my cell number. So if there's any question, they can call. We actually had a guy out, and I believe it was Denver. If you guys out in Denver, if I'm telling a story that's not true, let me know. But I believe it was Denver. He put the transmitter in an ammo container, which is quite common. Mm-hmm. Then he went to the bottom underneath a freeway, and he chained it to an overpass, and then he wrote on the top, "This is not a bomb."
Oh my gosh!
I think they either blew the box up or something, but that's not a very good way to go.
This is not a bomb.
There's a lot of tricks. Rule number one, never trust the bunny. The bunny will lie to you every time. Back in the 70s, we were running live transmitters in cars, and so it was a lot of fun to I worked around the railroad. I took my cassette recorder down, recorded all kinds of railroad sounds, with the locomotives and bills and all that. And then I went up on the hill about 10 miles away, and hi, this is the bunny, come and find me. And I'm playing locomotive sounds in the background. And on the simplex frequency off the side, I hear him. Yeah, I heard the train. He's got to be down with this. So they all head down the train. And then I started playing steamboat whistles. And then I started playing carnival sounds, barkers and stuff. So, have a lot of fun with it.
It doesn't have to just be come find me, blah, blah.
No. One of the guys went down to a place called Modern Display and paid about $200 for him to make a fake rock. And he put the fake rock in the middle of the field. And the guy that actually found it, he said, I went all around that rock about 20 times. And finally I decided to stand on it to see if I could see better. And he says, I stood on it. I go, hey, this doesn't feel like a rock.
Wow.
Another one was a dripping faucet. They took a piece of PVC pipe with the antenna inside. They stuck it right next to the flowers, and they even hooked it up to the water, so it was dripping. And that was it. Now, you got to remember, this is transmitter hunting, not antenna hunting.
Right.
Out in California, it's quite common for them to put an obvious antenna in the tree, and then 50 feet away is the transmitter. And people go back and, hey, I found it. Really, where was the transmitter?
Right.
Bicycle basket. I had a guy put one in the bicycle, and he just rode around circles around all the hunters. Southern California, they're crazy. Let me tell you just two stories. Down there, they take poles with rope, and they'll stretch them out from a bottom area of a valley, mm-hmm. and they make like a 50 element 2 meter beam. And it's pointing right up into a box canyon. So people are all over the box canyon 20 miles away trying to find it. They'll take a Yagi, put it on a rotator with a motor, and they'll rotate it around. The granddaddy of them all, back at the Southern California transmitter hunting group, they go on all day look and finds. They were told they were in California, just outside of LA, and they said, okay, travel west until you hear it, or east, travel east till you hear the signal, and then go find it. The transmitter, by the time they found it 2 days later, was on top of a mountaintop in St. George, Utah, over 300 miles away. Most of them never made it past Vegas. Their wife says, no, turn around, come home. That's it,
Right.
One of the worst things I've ever heard, and this happened here in Salt Lake back in the 60s. This is when everybody was on AM 145.5 AM 2 meters. And the transmitter was actually in the airport terminal in a briefcase strapped to one of the chairs with a chain, with a lock, with a coat hanger antenna coming out of the top. The guys that found it, they actually pulled their car right up in front of the terminal. And you can't do this these days.
Yeah.
Pulled up in front of the terminal. They got out. They brought this. One of them took the battery out of the car. So here comes three guys traipsing through there. One guy's carrying a battery. The other guy's carrying the radio, which is, I can't remember what radio. It was one of the old radios. And another guy's carrying a 4-element beam. And they're traipsing through the airport looking for this briefcase.
Oh, my goodness.
Times
have changed.
I don't think you're going to do that anymore.
No. You won't get near the front door with anything in your hand like that, I can promise you.
Now, one of the sneaky things we did a couple of years ago, John works down in a building where there's a lot of police cars. And so they have cars there that have antennas on them, but they're used for training and chasing each other around the track and everything. So we took the transmitter, put it in the trunk of one of the police cars, hooked it up to a police antenna. So when the guys finally tracked it down to the parking lot where the transmitter was, they're looking at a sea of about 50 police cars, every one of them with antennas.
Wow.
I think one person found it.
My goodness. Listening to those stories, unless you're involved in fox hunting, and there may be guys, Larry, like you out there, and John, that are doing this, that listen to this program. I would think the large majority of us aren't doing that. And it just seems to me that you just kind of told us some things we never even realized necessarily that were going on in transmitter hunting, and the fun that could be had there. I mean, no idea, none at all. And it was just something like, for me locally, they might do it once a year, maybe twice a year, depending. But I had no idea that it was such a big thing. I want to talk to you some more about it after this break. We'll be back in just a moment. We've got Larry Jacobs with us. His call is Whiskey Alpha 7 Z Bravo Oscar. You're listening to Ham Radio 360 Podcast. MTCRadio.com is the place to go to pick up your ICOM radio gear. We talk about it every show. Listen, if you're interested in getting into D-Star, they've got a brand new introductory rig, entry-level D-Star radio for you right now at MTCRadio.com. Check it out. It's the ID 4100. It's a great new rig that they developed with you, the new D-Star user, in mind. It's got GPS built into it, an optional Bluetooth capability. There's an app that you can use along with your phone, as well as an SD card. It allows you to not only record things that are being said over the radio, it also allows you to pre-program the frequencies you want into the memory banks of the radio from your computer instead of having to do it with a cable and this and that. Check them out, mtcradio.com. It's the ID 4100 from ICOM. All right, so we're back with Larry, and we're talking about this transmitter hunting and the fun that could be had, and as well as the utility of it in case something were to happen around you that you needed to locate a transmitter that was hung up or someone sitting on a microphone. Happens all the time on the local fire department frequencies for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but maybe they just need some training. Maybe I could start a contracting business. Anyway, let's talk about when we're going out on a transmitter hunt. Larry, are there certain things that we can anticipate hearing or things we should look for? Anything like that?
You bet. One of the almost universal calls that are given out is MO and then E or I. Let me see if I got one on here. 5500. No. Try it again. 555. Oh, there we go. Okay. This is one of my. Okay, he's sending out MOI. You don't have to know code. If I've got 5 transmitters going, can you hear that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All you have to do is count the dits at the end. This means it's transmitter number 2. And in this situation, let me turn this guy off. In this situation, I have 5 transmitters, and they are going at taking turns. So I got 5 minutes worth of transmitting. One transmitter will go for a minute. It'll send out an ID, It'll send out an ID. And then the next one, it'll turn off. And then as soon as it turns off, the other one comes on. So now you've got 5 rotating transmitters all on the same frequency. And they've got little calls going that tells you I'm transmitter number 2. So you have to look at this and go, do I want to start chasing each one individually? You go crazy because you have to, at one point you got to go, I'm going to stand right here for 4 minutes and wait for that transmitter to come on so I can find it and then go to the next one.
Right.
If you try and chase them back and forth, and I try and stage them so that they're not in a pattern, this one over here will be way over on this side of the yard, this one will be on the other side of the yard, so you can't really chase them. But that's one of the things, and that's kind of universal. That's what international transmitting hunting is all about.
Is that some kind of device that is commercially available that makes those tones? What were you using there?
That's the PICON controller,
Okay.
PICCON, and it's Bionics. And they have, it's www.byonics.com. He makes a really nice controller. And for you workshop guys, you can build your own. They'll send you the board and all of the components. You can build it. I'm not that good a builder anymore, so I just buy it. It's only about $65 for the thing. But this will do a myriad of things. It'll send your call. It'll turn on and off at different points. And like I said, if you hook it up to a transceiver, you can actually reconfigure it. And if people are getting too close, you can say, "Oh, I'm going to only put it on for 1 minute every 5 minutes if you want," So that's kind of cool. Now, what I was receiving here on, this is the BKY or BK3YNG Sniffer 4. These are actually made in Australia. And it's such an insulated little box that if you take the antenna off, you're not going to be getting anything into it. So it has automatic attenuation. I'm going to turn this thing on and show you. Instead of having an S meter, it's audio. So it starts out low, and as you go higher and higher and higher, it kicks in another 10 dB attenuation, drops down low and higher. So with my measuring tape antenna and this, I can just walk literally. I can go from 5 miles away to walking right up onto the thing.
Wow. And
you put on stereo headphones. I know you're stereo. And you're listening to the signal from the transmitter in the left ear, and you're listening to your little sniffer in the right ear, and nobody else can hear it. So you're not giving a clue to the other hunters. You can just watch. And the thing of it is, when you find it, don't get real excited. I found it. You just nonchalantly, oh, there it is. I'll just keep looking this way. Oh, maybe it's over there by that trash can. And it's kind of a card game. You got to have your poker face on when you play these things.
Yeah, and that's not a really inexpensive device, but it's what, $300-400 to buy that sniffer you're talking about?
$300. When I bought mine, I had to get it from Australia, and I had to wait a whole month for them to build it, ship it. But there's a guy down in Southern California that actually stocks them now.
Cool.
So you can almost get it overnight if you want. But they're $300.
That's a really interesting device. I mean, that would be something good for any municipality or anybody to have, I guess.
Well, I use it with the Scouts too. It's got a Scout mode. Okay. You can program it, lock it in so the Scouts can't mess it up. And one of the things we do out here is geocaching and transmitter hunting. And what we do, we give the Scouts, okay, here's your geocache GMRS. Here's your GMS. Did I say that right? Anyway, here's your geocaching coordinates. Mm-hmm. So they take the GPS and they go find it, and then they'll find the treasure, and in it'll have the frequency for the transmitter. So then they'll take their antennas and go find the transmitter, and there's the next coordinates for your next geocache, and you can do this 6-7 times as long as the Scouts can keep finding them.
So they have to find the geocache to find the frequency, to find the geocache to find the frequency.
Find the frequency to find the geocache to find the frequency. At one point, you got to stop.
Yeah.
But, this is part of radio orienteering, a merit badge,
right.
And that qualifies. So, hey, if you're a Scout guy, this is a great way to get out of the house. You tell your wife, well, I need to go find this. We got to help the Scouts. I mean, there are...
That's a brilliant idea. I mean, talk about a great practice for something like CERT or a local search and rescue group, or even your Scouts or anything like that. I mean, there's just loads of opportunity to learn in every bit of that.
Yeah, it was about back in the 70s. Remember when CB was big time?
Oh, yeah.
2-meter rigs are being stolen like crazy because they look just like CB. In fact, Antenna Specialists even put out there a little thing that went on their antenna that says, "This is not a CB antenna." Well, we were on the local repeater one time, and all of a sudden we get, breakity broke. Anybody copy the big dog out here? It's like we thought it was a ham messing around. So somebody comes back, "Yeah, this is Stinky. How you doing there, big dog?" Well, big dog come back, "Yeah, breakity broke. I've got this new CB I just bought, and boy, it's a good." Well, we figured out he thought he was on CB. So there was like 3 of us started conversation. "Yeah, there, big dog. Where you at? We'd like to see that big CB of yours." And he told us he was at a car wash out about 15 miles away. So we went out, we found him, blocked him, called the sheriff's department, and recovered a 2-meter rig. So
wow.
An antenna would have been nice then instead of us. I think we all probably broke more FCC rules than that guy ever did. just trying to find him.
Trying to recover the FCC's licensed rig.
Yeah, that's true.
That's funny. Well, you could do that cough thing where you do your call sign in a cough, like K4CDN. What was that?
Well, the thing of it is, we didn't want to use their call signs because we thought they'd give it away. So we all got handles that day.
That's funny.
And since my call was ZBO, I called myself Zebo. And the crazy thing is, I'm still known to this day by half the people in the valley as Zebo. It's a good thing I didn't pick Stinky or something.
Yeah, something bad. Yeah, something.
Yeah.
They'd remember that one too.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Well, Larry, we've enjoyed catching up with you. I tell you, the time has really gone fast, and it doesn't always do that sometimes when you're learning about something, but this has just been brilliant to listen to. I had no idea that first it was an international competitive thing. I had no idea that people were so involved in this, and it was such a part of the hobby. Local Hamfest here, I don't think they do a transmitter hunt, but are building antennas. I like that idea as well. So thank you for coming here and hanging out with us. And like I said, being a ham all these years, and your father and now your son, it's just some really cool stuff to see it pass on through. And building on that and sharing with us what you've learned over these almost 50 years of being a ham.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm a missionary for ham radio, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I've been called an evangelist. It's kind of funny. It's almost like, why are you so evangelistic about this ham radio thing? And my question is, well, it's great. I mean, I tell people, if I go to a great restaurant, I tell people about it. If I like my truck, I tell people about it. So why wouldn't I tell them about my favorite hobby?
There you go. You got her down.
Yep. Well, Larry, thank you again. Guys, his call is Whiskey Alpha 7 Z Bravo Oscar. His name is Larry Jacobs. You can catch his son, John, on the brand new Field Radio podcast that follows this show on Thursdays. So make sure you're tuning in as well. So we appreciate you being here, Larry, and thank you again. Thank you for sharing with us about this stuff. And guys, if you have questions, we'll try to get them to Larry and get them answered for you, as well as we'll have show notes in the and links in our show notes for you to be able to come in and find some of these things that he's been talking about this time through. Thanks again, Larry.
No problem. And by the way, just as a side note, we're going to make a YouTube video and all the things we've been talking about and show some demonstrations. So I don't know. Well, I'm not sure exactly what the address will be, but it'll be coming up this next week. By the time this gets in the box and wrapped up, I think we'll probably have a YouTube video out for that too. Well,
that's going to be hard to beat. Well, you can find it in the show notes. How's that?
No problem. Love it.
Larry, thank you so much again for being here with us. I've learned a load of stuff. I shared this episode a few days early with my sons to kind of give them an idea of what we're going to be talking about this week. The transmitter hunting thing really lit them up, so we'll have to see where it goes. They also kind of like the idea of making their own antenna, although they don't have their own radio. So, Kel's got a list of materials, and I'll be taking that to the Home Depot, Lowe's, or wherever to get the materials here for us. Speaking of list of materials, if you go to the website, hamradio360.com, click on the link for this new show, you'll have everything there that we've talked about, whether it's the books, it's the organizations, it's the rules, it's plans to build your own directional antenna. It's all there, hamradio360.com. Don't forget, coming up Thursday, John's going to be here with episode number 2 of Field Radio Podcast, and Jeremy and George will be back next Tuesday with the latest from the workbench. Guys, thank you so much for listening, supporting the show, sharing it with your friends, letting everybody know what we're doing here on 360. God bless you. Thanks for listening. 73, y'all.
Thank you for listening to the Ham Radio 360 podcast, brought to you by Main Trading Company, Paris, Texas, and by Elecraft.com, hands-on ham radio. To learn more about the show, visit our website, hamradio360.com. 73, y'all.